Hello everyone, how's it going? Today I'm going to talk about the 1982 film TRON, released by Disney in July of 1982. This was another groundbreaking film that came out this summer, mainly for its use of digital effects, of creating a digital world for the first time. The main Most of the movie is set in a digital environment, so it really was ahead of the curve as far as the vision for the story, and really unlike any film that had been made before it, as far as the way it used technology in such an innovative way. Directed by Steven Lisberger, who was inspired by the video game Pong. And, video game culture is really starting to coalesce in the early 1980s with gaming systems like Atari or Intellivision, ColecoVision. Arcades are everywhere in shopping malls, and so there is a real culture shift as far as the relationship with technology. Personal computers are also starting to become more and more popular by the early 1980s, and so this is a film that really capitalizes upon all the innovation happening with computers. And it's interesting that Disney did the movie because Disney was still doing mostly family movies. Disney's animated films were not as popular as they once were. This was kind of an odd time for Disney, and yet they made this film that was innovative and became a franchise and remains a great looking film to this day. And I really think that's the main enjoyment to get from Tron, is that it looks unlike any other movie before or since, with the various animation techniques involved, use of computer graphics, and it just has a really otherworldly feel to it, look to it. The story itself, of course, we have Jeff Bridges, the star of the film, as Flynn, who is a software engineer who was fired by this big company in the film, and he is called to try to hack into the system of this company. So the film also has David Warner is also in the film. There's Cindy Morgan. There's Bruce Boxleitner in the film, and the story. And I think sometimes watching the film, the story itself can be a little bit. I don't know if confusing is the right word. You don't really. I guess the story itself isn't super important. Once Flynn gets he gets lasered into this digital realm of this computer game program, and he has to survive. But we learn that there's this whole other digital environment where the bad side wears red and the good side wears blue, and they are in this grid system, and they have to compete in various competitions to escape, and that's like the thing too, like, can they escape this digital environment that is really cool to look at, but at the same time seems kind of ominous, to not be able to escape from it. And there's the one scene I remember watching, it was the simulated sea, where there's actually water in this digital environment, and I guess they drink the water to charge up their circuits or something. But it's a very odd, surreal scene, and there's so much of that surrealness going through. It's like, do they eat? Do they sleep in this realm? It's a little unclear, but kind of haunting in some ways. But at the same time, it looks cool, and it looks really interesting. So anyway, but yeah, visually just a great film, and just really, really interesting in that way. I mean, there is some corny dialogue and some cheesy moments and things like that, but it's overall the vision is really interesting. So should mention that the score by Wendy Carlos is also I think one of the really interesting scores of the time period as well. And this, like I said, this movie, it had moderate success when it came out in 1982. It didn't quite approach E.T. numbers or Poltergeist numbers or anything like that, but it held its own, and like I said, it's gained a real life of its own since the film came out. Yeah, yeah, and it's I know Alice in Wonderland was another. There is that quality to it. I know that was an influence on the film as well, where we have this really high tech environment, but we have like a very kind of traditional story. Like you could almost say like a hero's journey. I guess if we look at Flynn in that way, in the digital realm, of course, that's really what the Wachowskis would do with the Matrix as well. Taking the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell and putting that into kind of a cyberpunk environment. So that's another aspect of the film, and yeah. I've never read I would like to get a hold of the novelization. I know some of these novelizations from the early 1980s are hard to get, some are easy to get, but I would be curious someday to read the novelization of Tron, just to see if it fleshes out the story a little bit more with the world and the characters and what's going on, and I also like the aspect of it too, and I think it is relevant relevant for today. Like, we have like the David Warner representing, the, today's terms, the tech bro, the leader of this tech, very high advanced company that has some sinister designs. And I guess if we look at Jeff Bridges and Cindy Morgan and Bruce Boxleitow's characters as the good side, like using technology, for the good of it. I think there's even a discussion of that in the film, where the idea of using technology to improve things, to help to make things better, and as opposed to using it strictly for profit and things like that. So I think all those themes are interwoven into the story with Tron, and yeah, and the film itself led to a lot of video games. As far as a film inspired by video games also leads to many video games. I can remember growing up having the Intellivision and playing, I think it was the Solar Sailor game. It had a voice thing on it, which was really big, and if you would have to plug in this voicer into the system, they called it, and then put in the cartridge for the game, and you could play the Tron game. I remember playing that a lot when I was really, really young, really young, playing it, and I can remember watching the movie and being way more familiar with the video game before I even watched the movie. So anyway, Tron, just part of that summer of 1982, just another really forward-looking movie that was really, kind of so many films, especially as we get into the 90s, we get the more cyberpunk influence on science fiction, which we would see with so many films like Virtuosity or The Lawnmower Man, or some of the more like cheesier movies to the more high concept movies like The Matrix or Existenz, the Cronenberg film that would really play with these concepts in some compelling ways. But Tron was a real innovator in that regard, as far as a harbinger of where the genre would be going as we get to the close of the 21st to the 20th century and going to the 21st century. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on Tron, and thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later.